Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!
Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you'd like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live. There's also a PayPal, Patreon and crypto link in the info box below the video. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel, so please share the show on Facebook and Twitter. And one last time, if you're new to the channel or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. Now, we are joined by Righteous Force and 10th Man, together with a whole bunch of people in Discord, so welcome one and all.
Hey.
Man, me and 10th always overtalk each other when we say good morning.
Hey. We're like-minded.
Yeah.
Hello everyone in Discord.
Hello. Morning.
Good morning. Any signs of a physical sphere edge horizon formerly known as Earth curve?
Not from Sacramento Airport. Or should I say, like Adam, not from Nottingham.
Any signs of axial rotation of the Earth-based variety?
Nope.
Just you
I
answering
like
these questions today, take it, 10th Man.
I guess so. So bring it on. I don't feel any motion, no axial rotation of the Earth-based variety. I do feel motion in my car, or if I get on a carnival ride, however.
Any scientific evidence of gravity?
No scientific evidence of an effect that they've called gravity, so they could keep their nonsense going.
Any single viable hypothesis from any of the fields of astronomy, cosmology, or astrophysics?
Still waiting on Dr. Becky to respond, but I doubt she ever will. But the answer is no.
Any evidence of the distance to the sun?
Over there, as Arvin would say. Arvin, are you here?
Joined.
Yes, just came in.
Any evidence of the
Perfect
distance to the
timing.
sun? Arwin?
Hello.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
We hear you. Any evidence of the distance to the sun?
Yes, it's over there.
Fabulous.
Or wait, the distance you say.
93.
No.
Heard some rumblings from Discord.
But I said 93 something.
About 93 million miles based on an R value. You'd need a bit of R for that.
Oh, that. Okay.
Any evidence of a self-perpetuating molten iron core at the centre of a presupposed spherical Earth?
Still digging.
Any
I
evidence?
think your intro animation is the best evidence to date, Nathan.
I missed the beginning bit. I'll talk through you. Sorry, Arwin. Say that again.
I think your
Still
intro
digging.
animation is the best evidence to date.
Yeah. That's a jolly good evidence right there. An animation of a molten iron core with Earth separating into. Not really evidence, but still. Nice intro. Shout out to Adam Meakin of Iron Realm Media. Any evidence of the R value, Earth radius?
Black Swan. Took care of that.
Hey, Paul. Hey, Paul.
Hey, sorry. How you guys doing?
Very well. Last but by no means least, any evidence that you can have gas pressure without the necessary antecedent of a container?
Nope. No possible way.
Radiant gravity.
All
Radius
good
gravity.
questions, all unanswered after how long? Over a year? Over 2 years now?
Did you say radius gravity, Arwin?
Gradient, then gravity.
Radiant gravity.
Gradient, gravity, space-time bending. That's the evidence.
That concludes the housekeeping. What's the name? Emma UK put out a clip, I think it was from Jose's channel, with Bev Try Thinking and Bob the Science Guy. He's talking about establishing level with a water level. And all Bob the Science Guy can do is insert the fundamentalist religious presupposition that it's automatically bending by presupposition. He's got no justifiable reason. And after about 2 or 3 minutes of Bev dragging him around by the short hair saying, no, level's level. It's establishing a level plane. That's a geometric term. This is what it is. And you're just asserting that it's curve. And then he says, oh no, you're going to have a difference in terms of what the water levels are showing. In other words, fundamentally contradicting what a water level actually does. And then he says it's doing it because of gravity. You're like, oh my God, how many times? And then just by coincidence, somebody in Ballbusters put up, I might as well put it up. It's got a bit of swearing in it, but there we go.
Oh,
Evidence,
that's a good one.
motherfucker. Do you have any? Say gravity one more time.
Oh, it's brilliant. Love that one.
I just thought that's quite funny and appropriate. You got any evidence? No, but I've got this thing called gravity, and I'll assert it to force whenever needed. It'll force things to do things globy.
Yeah, but isn't it an effective strategy just to bring up gravity? Because by just saying that, they just bought the whole discussion another 5 minutes of you having to explain why gravity isn't what they think it is in order for them to presuppose that it could be a solution. So they just bought 5 minutes at least red herring time every
That's all they
time
can
just
do.
by saying gravity.
Yep, correct. Or angular momentum, or a whole number of buzzwords that they just throw in just to obfuscate you win. Normally they'll throw it in at the point that you've actually won.
So how do we get around that?
You unpack gravity, throw out a few George Musa or Brian Cox quotes. There's not really a force of gravity at all, Brian Cox. Gravity is not a force, George Musa. There's loads of them. Just dig out a couple and throw it back at them. Point out that it's pseudo-Ramonian force space, length, breadth, depth and time, and the bending of this concept won't give rise to any force.
Right. So that's why I said what I said. Gradient, gravity, space-time bending. That's the summary of the 10-minute debacle that breaks out every time somebody starts to say, yeah, the gas pressure and then on to gravity. It usually does go that direction, doesn't it?
Direction. Boom, boom.
Not that type of direction. No, the direction of the conversation. If you bring up gas pressure without a container, it's likely that the gradient will be brought up, and then it's realized, why do you bring it up? Well, because gravity is causing the situation. And then, so usually from gas pressure, it does go to gravity.
Well, if you think about the incoherency of the rhetoric, okay, we're supposedly spinning at 1,000 miles an hour at the equator. The atmosphere is in lockstep with the spin, but the centrifugal forces don't even sling the air off of the so-called spinning globe either. You see where I'm going with that? And also, the gravity gets weaker as you get higher. So if a particle gets further and further away, then the less the gravitational force is applied. So It's just the whole rhetoric doesn't make sense.
Hang on. Let me bring in the next word. Velcro.
So all we're doing now is detailing their excuse why we don't have Coriolis effect, all of it in violation of natural law. So it's meaningless nonsense, despite the fact that the gravity you would be describing is 100 years out of date anyway. It's not adhered to by the current crop of pseudoscience priests.
Well, actually, no. As gravity weakens, that is actually the Einsteinian version. The Newtonian version is that gravity has the same strength no matter how high you go. So really, if you use that's what I'm saying. Using the current rhetoric, gravity weakens as you get further and further away from a mass.
What's weakening if it's not a force?
This so-called pseudo force that doesn't exist that you're supposed to think of as a force.
So the pseudo force is weakening.
Right. So it loses. The pseudo force has the ability to weaken as it goes up, so it can't hold anything down.
Wasn't QE
So
on
the
yesterday
non-force force.
when we were talking about the apparent Coriolis force and how it does not have a magnitude? You can't have a little meter in a plane accounting for a not actual force. Same applies to gravity. Not a force. No magnitude.
So the non-force force. That isn't the force.
Sleeping Warrior is just some bit from the chat. A force is a cause, an acceleration is an effect. Simple as that. Yeah, a force is a push or a pull. You know, an interaction, something mechanical potentially happening to something else. Something forcing it to do something. That's what forces are. Not, well, it doesn't actually do anything or cause it to change in any direction whatsoever. That's a pseudo-force. Well, you don't have to account for pseudo-forces. They're not real. They're not actual. Nothing's actually happening. It might appear that something's happening, but it isn't.
I don't even understand why they had to call it a pseudo-force in the first place.
Helium
Why did they
balloons.
even feel the need to put that comparison out there like that?
Because the Newtonian version was debunked with a helium balloon.
Okay.
The universal law of
You're saying
gravitation.
pseudo-
Mass attracting mass until you get to a mass that isn't attracting. It's repelling, like a helium balloon.
Not talking about Coriolis pseudo-force?
Either gravity as a pseudo-force, Coriolis as a pseudo-force, any force that's not actually a force. You can think of Coriolis as a force, but it isn't. You can think that when you watch a plane seem to deviate, if that happened, it does not, because you were rotating underneath, which we are not, and you looked up and you said, oh, looks like it's curving. Well, it's not. It just looks like it is because you're spinning underneath it. Well, that's not a force that the plane needs to concern itself with. It would have to concern itself with the ground rotating underneath because that would shorten flight times. But the effect of Coriolis, i.e. a not actual deviation, you don't have to worry about that in the plane. You can't even observe it from that reference frame. It's irrelevant from that inertial reference frame if you're in the plane. Nothing ever will occur in terms of Coriolis effect to that plane. Because you're not observing it from a non-inertial spinning reference frame if you're in the plane. So to talk about Coriolis when you're talking about a projectile, a train, a plane, a helicopter, a drone, or anything else that's in the inertial reference frame is irrelevant. Because Coriolis is only ever an observation from the spinning reference frame. So it doesn't matter what the projectile's doing, it doesn't matter if it's stationary, if it's a lamppost concreted into the ground as you spin around on a roundabout and look at it. Its momentum in that instance is zero. It's not moving, it's concreted. So the helicopter speeding up or slowing down, nothing to do with Coriolis. Only the apparent drift you think you see when you look at it rotating underneath it. And that would necessitate you rotating underneath it. For all those idiots who come here and say, look, you don't have any deviation. The plane's powered. Oh, right, what's that got to do with Coriolis effect when it's an observation from a spinning reference frame? Doesn't matter what the engines are doing. In the same way, it doesn't matter that my lamppost example's concreted into the ground. I still see it deviating. Seem to deviate. Go on, Owen.
So,
I'm getting this feedback loop. What is this? Okay, it's gone. But yeah, I had a sort of a historical technical question about the Coriolis effect, because I know when roughly Newton's theories were kind of established, But when was Coriolis effect like officially figured out? What era was that? Was that the same period? Was it
I've
made
no
by the
idea.
same people arranging Newtonian physics, as it were?
I don't know. It's not something that needs figuring out per se. It's just an observation, right? You look at a ball as it leaves your hand on the roundabout. You just go, looks like it's deviating, and then you realise that it isn't. That's all it is. I mean,
No, but
it's not like a
I know
discovery.
that. I get that totally. It can't be more clear. So many hours. But the issue is more like, where did the motivation to call it a pseudo force come from? That has to have a reason. You said, okay, it's because of Newtonian physics. But if it was established, the Coriolis force, which doesn't really have to do anything with forces, if it was established much later, then it's not that logical to me that it would be just to associate something that's not a force with a force because of gravity. No?
No, nothing to do with gravity.
The Coriolis force just means something spinning. When you see water circling a drain, that could be likened to a Coriolis force.
No,
It's
it
when
couldn't.
something is spinning
No, it
and
couldn't.
something else is
No,
deviating.
wrong. Stop. What do you mean water going down the drain could be equated to Coriolis force? No, unless you are actually in that swirling water, rotating with it, watching something seem to deviate. Sod all to do with Coriolis effect. No, water going down the drain is not Coriolis effect. Coriolis effect is you rotating, not the water rotating. You in the water rotating if you're in a giant whirlpool and you're looking as you're spinning around in a whirlpool up at something that's fixed on the bank, for example, and you go, wow, that thing on the bank looks like it's curving because I'm spinning down a whirlpool. Well, that would be Coriolis because you're on a rotating non-inertial reference frame, a spinning whirlpool, but you're observing it from the spinning pool or the spinning hurricane. You have to be in the hurricane, spinning around, watching things seem to deviate for it to be called Coriolis effect. As for things that you watch spin, that's not actual deviation. That's not apparent deviation. That's an actual spin direction.
Come on, Nathan. You know that whirlpool, that water's moving in a straight line. You do know that, don't you? Come on.
For what lemon birds to make sense would mean that you're watching something that's actually going straight, you're spinning underneath it, and it looks like it's curving. In other words, you're watching a river from a roundabout, and as you spin around on the roundabout, you go, that river looks like it's bending around to the right as I move towards it. Well, obviously the river's not moving at all. It's a river. It's not suddenly moving its banks, but because you're spinning and looking at something that isn't, it seems to curve. Well, that river seeming to curve is a not actual deflection of the river.
Because I think the split is between the seeming Coriolis deviation and the actual deviation you get when you're in a spinning system that's deflecting your object. I think that's where some of the confusion lies.
No, the object does not deflect. No, the object doesn't deflect. If I'm on a roundabout, Lemon Bird, right, so I'm on a merry-go-round or a roundabout, and just off to the side of the roundabout, lighting the roundabout, is a lamppost. And it's concreted into the ground, it's lit up, and it's above the roundabout. Now, as I spin underneath the lamp on the roundabout, I'm spinning. And the Coriolis of force that you're going to describe is you looking up at the lamppost and watching the lamppost seem to come towards you and seem to move away from you as you rotate underneath it. Well, that observation, what you're actually looking at, in this case a lamppost, definitely doesn't have an actual spin direction. The lamppost is fixed. So likewise, if you're looking at something like a whirlpool or a hurricane, you're observing that actually spin rather than seem to spin because you're spinning. Does that make sense?
Well, in this philosophy, motion and forces are expressed as straight line vectors. Anything that makes it go off of its quote-unquote true straight path is going to be interpreted as a force. So
yeah, pseudo-force.
For the people in this philosophy, they need to explain why things do or do not go along their quote-unquote straight path that they quote-unquote would normally go into.
Right, but a whirlpool going down the drain isn't normally a straight path, is it?
Yeah, so that's why people would tend to say that there's a force taking it away from its straight, normal path in
Right.
this philosophy.
But in Coriolis terms, Coriolis is not a force. It's not forcing anything to do anything. So when I go under the lamppost, has the lamppost moved when I see it seem to curve? No. There's no force applied to the lamppost. Even if there was, it's concreted into the ground. Still seems to curve, though. Still has a Coriolis force, pseudo-force, applied to it. Obviously, there's no force applied to it. The lampost's not moving. I'm moving underneath it. And my perception, my view, is that it seems to be moving. Pseudo-force.
In that case, we have a different definition of a force. The definition of a force that you seem to be using implies a knowledge of the natural activity of an object. And force is making it act in a way that it doesn't normally act. So for us to know what forces are, period, we need to know how things normally act to see whether or not they're being forced into a certain sort of behavior.
Okay,
But,
so as I spin
this
under...
stuff get very crazy, philosophically anyway.
So as I spin under the roundabout, you tell me what force is applied to the lamppost I'm looking at as it seems to come towards me.
To the lamppost, there's no force to the lamppost at all.
But you're seeing Coriolis force. That's what you're observing when it seems to come towards you. That is the Coriolis force.
Well, spinning objects or objects in a spinning frame do appear to have some sort of deviation from their straight path. If you go with the philosophy that forces and vectors are normally expressed in a straight path. Based off of that philosophy, something is making it curve and go away from its straight path, and that's enough for a force for their ideology or whatever.
Yeah, a pseudo-force. As I say, there's nothing moving the lamppost, but it's still seeming to move in a curved path. Well, that's nothing to do with any force applied to it. It's you rotating underneath. Therefore, what you have and what you observe is a pseudo-force moving a concreted lamppost. Obviously, the concreted lampost's not moving. But you see it seem to move, but there's not a force there, just a pseudo-force.
Can I ask you about the lamppost, Nathan, real quick? Is that
You can, but I just want to shout out Al Junkie, who says, favourite food for a globe seller is word salad, smiley face. Thank you very much for the super chat. Also, Emma UK. Right the hand would love to be unbanned and join. I don't have any control over the server. I didn't know it was banned. Sorry. Go on, Paul.
All he has to do is apologize and he can come back.
There you go. There's
Simple.
your answer from a mod in the server that isn't mine. Go ahead,
Is
Paul.
the lamp post in Narnia?
No, the lampost's on the ground.
So it's a pseudo force, but if it was in Narnia, it would be a real force, right?
No, it'd still be a pseudo-force. If you were underneath it in Narnia, you can still apply this pseudo-fictitious, non-actual force to a lamppost with you rotating underneath it. In fact, you don't even need a roundabout. If you just spin around under the roundabout and look up as you do so, the lamppost looks like it's moving. But in reality, it's just you twirling around underneath it. Well, that seeming to curve wouldn't become an actual force because you're in Narnia.
I was just checking, just making sure.
I thought you were leading to, well, if the lamppost was claimed to be on a spinning ball Earth, would it have a real force attached to it? But you weren't going there, clearly.
No, I wasn't going there. I was actually trying to see if I could make a joke, but it didn't work out.
Hey-ho.
Well, so much of this definition of force is really contingent on knowing how an object normally acts. So unless we can say how an object normally acts, we can't really propose to know what's forcing what to move in whatever direction.
Yeah, but that's why they've picked this way of justifying a ball Earth that spins, because they can argue for 5 straight hours about what happens to the projectile. You're saying, well, we need to figure out what force is normally applied to whatever object we're observing to have Coriolis force. Well, I'm talking about a lamppost that's concreted into the ground, and correct me if I'm wrong, there's no assumptions required, there's no measurements required. I can say with absolute certitude that the lamppost I'm detailing is not moving. So what do I need to know about it?
So much of relativity is asking, are we moving and or the other object moving? Because the lamppost wouldn't be moving, but if it's in a moving river, the river would move the lamppost while it does not move.
But that wouldn't be Coriolis.
Not moving, is it moving because it's in another moving medium?
Yeah,
it can get really philosophical.
You can, but none of this is Coriolis effect, though. As soon as you start detailing what the projectile's doing and how it's doing it, you're not describing Coriolis effect anymore. And that's why they do it the way they do it. Let's detail about how the projectile's moving, whether or not it's changing latitude, whether or not it's increasing, decreasing speed, whether or not it's retaining angular momentum, whether it's moving into the linear momentum. All of those things have got nothing to do with Coriolis effect whatsoever. But they'll detail them all day long, argue about whether or not you're retaining angular momentum. Well, who cares if your angular momentum's retained? The lamppost isn't moving a smegging inch. I can still see Coriolis effect in it, though. So I don't need to worry about what the lamppost, or the plane, or the bullet, or the pendulum, or anything else in the inertial reference frame is doing ever. And as soon as any fundy comes here and starts arguing about what the bullet, or the plane, or anything else is doing, I'll say I don't care. Because Coriolis effect is only ever an observation from the non-inertial spinning reference frame. What I see and how I see it is what Coriolis is. Not what the plane does, not what the bullet does, not what the lamppost does. Only what I see of the lamppost, or the plane, or anything else.
Because I think you're saying that the Coriolis effect is apparent and not actual. It doesn't cause any deflection. Because I think there's two camps here. One that's saying that it just looks like it's spinning, but it's not causing any real effect. And the other school that's saying when a spinning object spins, there's some sort of deflection and something that, makes something else veer off of its path by the spin of something. So I think what they're saying essentially is something is spinning. For the Coriolis effects they say that they're observing, whatever that is.
But that's not Coriolis effect or supposed force. The centripetal or centrifugal type forces. It's something else.
Because the centrifugal and centripetal forces are just toward the object that's spinning and away from the object that's spinning. But on an object that's, like a ball, when that ball, spins, you're going to have like the tie-dye appear to deflect.
I keep telling you.
I
keep telling you, you're detailing stuff that's happening to projectiles. And it's irrelevant of Coriolis. Doesn't matter what the projectile's doing. At all. That's all they want to argue about, though. That's what the globeheads want to argue about, what the projectile's doing. Because the causes of Coriolis effect is Earth rotating underneath stuff in the inertial reference frame. And to see Coriolis effect, you're observing it from that spinning Earth. So you're only ever going to have a Coriolis effect if you're on an Earth that's spinning underneath things. And that doesn't happen. So what do we argue about? Whether or not we're spinning underneath stuff? No, we'll argue about what the projectile does. That's their trick. Now, I only figured this out a couple of days ago with Zanuck after a 5-hour extravaganza. But that's how the magic trick works. I never really understood why we ended up arguing for 5 hours straight. Now I know. Because they'll detail what the bloody projectile's doing, when they should be detailing what the observation from a spinning reference frame with you turning underneath stuff should be doing. And we want to focus on that purely because, forget the Coriolis effect, once you've got it established that to have Coriolis effect, you must be rotating underneath stuff, that shortens flight times. But they'll talk about what the flight does. Sod all to do with Coriolis.
Not necessarily. You could have space moving over the object.
Say again.
What?
Say again.
Space could move over the unmoving object. In this case, space could move over the unmoving Earth, swirling around.
What is space?
What does that have to do with observing something from a spinning reference frame, though?
That would give rise to the spinning forces they call Coriolis from the spin of space, but not the spin of the object.
Do you know what Coriolis
itself.
effect is, Lemon Bird? Can you define Coriolis for me, please?
Let's see. According to the dictionary, hold on.
So let me get it straight. You've just spent 2 or 3 minutes, maybe longer, discussing what you think Coriolis effect is incorrectly on 3 separate occasions. Now you're going to go and look up what it actually means. My God.
I want a
oh dear.
verbatim
Yeah, what?
definition.
You should know. You've just told me about bloody stuff going down the drain being Coriolis effect. Now you're having to look it up. Clearly you don't know what Coriolis effect is, Lemonbird. Why are you talking?
I'm
telling you off. I'm telling you off. Shut up.
A rotating system.
Shut up. I don't want your wiki parroting nonsense. Now I've asked you if you know it. You don't have to go and look it up and parrot it off what you've got from wiki. You clearly don't know what it is, or you wouldn't be detailing water going down a drain. Why are you even talking about this?
Deflection due to a spinning object.
A spinning object? No, that's wrong.
According to the dictionary, that's basically what it's saying.
Oh, really? It's funny that you know, it's funny that Discord, given that we're in a paradigm where most dictionary entries will be heliocentric in nature. So you haven't detailed what Coriolis effect is. It's very simple to define.
Yeah, deflection due to a spinning object. That's
that's wrong. You've missed out the crucial criteria of what gives you Coriolis effect in that explanation. You haven't detailed what causes it. What causes Coriolis?
The spin of the object?
Wrong! The spin of the... The spin of the non-inertial reference frame underneath an inertial reference frame. That's it.
Well, this dictionary definition says an effect.
I don't care. I don't care. Do you think I care what you've just wiki parroted? Do you think I need challenging on this? Do you think I don't understand this, Lemonbird? Do you think I need a dictionary entry for me to understand Coriolis effect? I don't, I assure you. Just stop talking about it if you don't know what it is.
That's a wrong definition anyway.
Look, Coriolis effect is easy. Roundabout is a rotating non-inertial reference frame. Anything that leaves the roundabout is going to travel through the inertial reference frame. You rotating underneath as part of the non-inertial spinning reference frame and observing something not in your reference frame gives you Coriolis. One reference frame spinning under another. You observing from the spinning reference frame. That's it. It's really easy.
Because this definition doesn't say that. It says a force that tends acting perpendicular to the direction of motion into the
axis of rotation. Well, it's wrong. Coriolis is a pseudo-force. It's not pushing or pulling anything. As I look at the ball seem to curve, it's not actually curving. There is no force on the ball to give you Coriolis deviation. So when it starts off its explanation in the dictionary, it's a force, it's wrong.
Lemonbird, what does apparent deflection mean to you?
That it's not real. That there's no deviation from its normal path.
Well, and what reference frame is it in when you say that?
In the non-inertial reference frame?
Wrong.
Wrong.
So you need to understand how this works. It's not complicated once you understand it. But if you don't understand it, you'll assert that, no, this is happening from the non-inertial reference. No, the projectile's in the inertial reference frame. You're on the non-inertial reference frame observing it.
May I try something, Nathan?
Yeah.
All right, Lemonbird. Let's just work the argument backwards. They're trying to say we live on a ball that's spinning. Yeah. So if we live on the ball that's spinning and an airplane leaves the non-inertial reference frame, which would be the airport tarmac, and it's in the air, it's now in the inertial reference frame because it left the non-inertial reference frame. And if the Earth was spinning, the flight back from Charlotte, North Carolina to LA would be reduced by half the time, basically, because the Earth is now spinning towards you. But since that never happens, they make up all this crap. You understand why it's so convoluted? Because we're not spinning.
There's somebody showing something on voice chat, some sort of Coriolis nonsense. It's on a table, though, spinning table.
That's okay. That doesn't make it
If
nonsense.
That's the 1960 video. I have that. That is actually demonstrating Coriolis effect. I have that
Yeah,
video.
but he's not explaining it right. He swears that you got it wrong, and he's got 5 experiments that prove space time.
Who has?
Regicidal, something like that. I don't know
Who
what
has?
his name is.
Who are you talking about?
Regicidal. I told him come on and pipe up, but he won't. He's right under me on Discord.
That is. Oh, no, I saw the video. That is the video that describes Coriolis effect. If you watch the video completely, he's only showing you one piece of it. The guy that's on the one side is pushing the puck away from him, and because the table is spinning underneath, it appears from your vantage point that it's curving, but it's not. It's actually moving in a straight line. So that video is actually a good video that talks about the Coriolis effect.
Is that black and white one that you showed in the past, Paul?
Yes, that's the same one.
Yeah, that's a really good video. That actually proves the Earth is not spinning.
They claim it proves the Earth is spinning. I don't know.
Well, that's why they're brain dead. I mean,
Yeah.
what can you do with the
Come on,
mental illness?
medicinals.
We can't fix
Speak your
everything on
pain.
this show, you know. Share your pain.
Share it, medicinal. Come on out. Is that how you say your name? Why don't you come on and tell me how to pronounce your name?
Tell us where we're wrong, more importantly.
I want to see these 5 experiments that prove space-time.
Well, we can get to that. If you're saying we're wrong about Coriolis, fine, let's hear it. Let's hear how we're wrong. Hello? Dude, you're on the panel. Live show.
That's what I told them.
Kick him out. If he's in the panel just to spam our chat, I don't even look or display, just kick him out. No point being
Who
here,
is
mate,
it?
if you're just here to troll the chat on a live show. Go in the
I
live
did
stream,
tell them that.
troll
You're
that
not
chat.
going to contribute to leave.
If it was Regical, he was on mute. I just took him off mute.
Well, and I was just saying too that that's a good video describing Coriolis. So I don't understand how we're wrong if he's saying we're wrong by what that video is describing. Just please explain.
Here to troll the chat. Last call. Reggie Carl. I give up.
He's typing something. Let's see.
I don't care what he's typing. He's in the voice chat.
He says he's making waffles. He'll come after he's done making waffles.
So he's waffling.
Well,
thank you. That was perfect. Waffling.
I say it's fine then.
Right.
Talking crap, but he
Says
doesn't
that's
want to come
Kosho.
on.
Hold on. That's Kosho, Nathan. That's Kosho. Oh, okay. Thank you very much for letting me know, Emma UK. Also, another shout out to Al Jungi, who says, you got your ass handed, don't be bitter, Lemon Bird. I don't think he was. You're not bitter, are you, Lemon Bird?
I'm good. The main thing is whether or not a spinning object causes a real or just an apparent deflection. Does it cause things to deviate off of their true path or not? Because if it causes stuff to deviate off of their normal path without the spin, that would tend to be interpreted as a force.
Yeah, but it isn't. You spinning underneath something isn't going to force anything in the inertial reference frame to do anything. You can't cause something to do something just by looking at it. You can't cause the plane to curve. It just seems to curve when you watch it.
Remember, this isn't that difficult. If the Earth is spinning, and you're on it, that would be considered the non-inertial reference frame, much like the roundabout that Nathan uses, a spinning roundabout. If
Exactly
you're
like the
on
roundabout.
that thing and you throw a ball into the air straight, you're continuing to turn underneath it. So observationally, it looks like it's curving, but it's straight because it's in the inertial reference frame now. If it was in your hand and you never threw it, it'd be turning with you. Nothing to
Unless
view
space
other
is
than
spinning above the Earth, then you could
what?
have a spinning
What?
deflection
No,
or
say it again.
whatever from spinning space.
What
What?
space?
Hold on.
Solid, spinning, viscous ether space.
So you're saying the
Ah,
gases are spinning with the Earth? Is that what you're saying?
The Earth doesn't move. Space over the Earth moves.
Yeah, I think a guy discussed this yesterday. He was saying that, again, in their paradigm, the only actual claim of Coriolis that they could assert, given that they, at trench level, assert that the atmosphere is travelling along with the Earth, would be that the Sun is giving you an apparent movement, when in reality we're traversing it. We're orbiting it according to their rhetoric. So therefore, the movement of the Sun would be a Coriolis deviation. It's not moving, you're moving under it. That's their paradigm from space.
Lemonbird. What does the so-called ether have to do with Coriolis?
The spinning deviation would come from the spinning space, not the spinning Earth.
Say that again. The rotation would give you Coriolis. No. You have to be part of the spinning reference frame. So for you to observe Coriolis effect in that description that you've just given, you would need to be in this fanciful ether spinning around with it, watching something in an inertial reference frame not actually deviating, but seem to deviate because you're spinning around in the ether.
Loves that ether.
It put me to sleep last time I met it.
Boom, boom. But I just want,
Now, give me something to believe in.
I just want this to be clear with Lemonbird. Do you understand, Lemonbird, that whenever you're detailing spin and you're referencing Coriolis, you're going to be part of the observation and you're going to be on the spinning whatever. It doesn't matter what. You're on mute at the moment, Lemonbird. Got what you ask again?
I don't know. I guess I'm going to have to study up on this to see whether a spinning object causes an apparent or a real deflection from a thing's normal path, whatever that is. Otherwise, this Coriolis thing could be interpreted as the spin of the space above the Earth that's not moving. I think it's been erroneously interpreted as the Earth moving when really it's space above the Earth that's moving while the Earth stands still with the ether.
That might be the case. Or it might not be. But that's not Coriolis effect. You observing something spin isn't Coriolis effect. You being part of something that spins and watching something that's not part of that reference frame that's spinning, that's Coriolis. So whenever you detail something above your head like a hurricane, or in this instance, ether spinning, you watching something with an actual spin direction is not Coriolis. I'll just say it once more for Lemonbird. To observe Coriolis, to be detailing Coriolis, you are going to be spinning and watching something. That must be the case to be describing Coriolis. You watching something while you spin.
Can I say maybe real concisely too, maybe a different wording? If something is actually spinning, that is not Coriolis effect. The apparent spinning, that is Coriolis effect.
Yeah, not actual spin directions, apparent deviation.
mean, in that video, if you watch the video, it looks like the puck is spinning, but it's actually not. It's actually going straight.
Yeah, you've got retards in the chat. Evergreen. Nathan Oakley, why don't we see hurricanes crossing the equator? Who gives a shit? It's not Coriolis effect. It's not proving Earth spins. It's got nothing to do with Coriolis effect unless you're actually spinning around in that hurricane. So who cares, moron, from the chat, Evergreen? That's not Coriolis effect, moron. That's an actual spin direction you're detailing with hurricanes? Morons.
It's amazing when they even look up in their own textbooks. It's a fictitious force, and why they give it any validity after their own math professors call it fictitious. It's just amazing to be a ball-tard after an education like this.
Wish Chocolate was here so he can read the actual definition that Kosho cited. That'd be nice, but he's not here.
Because there's no Coriolis effect on the equator. What are you talking about? Coriolis effect on the equator would be in effect if Earth was spinning. You'd still be part of a spinning reference frame on a spinning Earth watching things deviate at the equator if Earth was spinning. So again, Evergreen, sit down, shut up, you're a moron, you don't understand what Coriolis effect is. Yes, there would be a Coriolis effect on the equator if Earth was spinning. There isn't, therefore there isn't.
So how can an apparent deflection cause a hurricane to spin?
It can't. Unless the hurricane is actually a wind travelling in a straight line and you look up at it from a spinning reference frame and see it seem to curve. Seem, meaning it's travelling straight and only seeming to curve. Unless that's the case, which it isn't when you've got a hurricane, it's got an actual spin direction. Coriolis is a not actual force. So describing what hurricanes do is irrelevant. Again, you're detailing something that's occurring in a claimed inertial reference frame, when Coriolis is an observation from a non-inertial spinning reference frame. So me observing a hurricane with an actual spin direction, that's not it seeming to curve as I rotate underneath it. That's not Coriolis effect.
Who the heck is this Easy E guy? That's it. I'm done with chat. That's it. Come on the show.
Well, that was a fun discussion of Coriolis.
Hey, Nathan,
About the
I'm
5
going to
experiments.
post that reference that Paul said chocolate. I just found it. So I'll
Where
post
did
it
you-
Master B and Paul, if you can read it. Second. Okay.
I don't see it in Master B.
It's coming. It's coming. Okay. Should arrive.
Okay, got it.
This is the one Kosho. This is the one Kosho did. Got it, Paul?
Hang on a second. I thought you put it in Master B. It looks like you... Okay, hang on a second. I'll look for it. Hang on. I've got some
I could
background
read-
noise. Yeah, you might
I'll
read
do
it.
it.
I've
I'll
got
read
it shared. I got some background noise.
I'll read it if that's all right then. I just want to give you the opportunity. This is the one Kosho put up. The object is not actually moving off its course. It only appears to be doing so because the Earth is turning beneath it. Causes of Coriolis effect. The main cause of Coriolis effect is the Earth's rotation, period. As the Earth spins in a counterclockwise direction on its axis, anything flying or flowing over a long distance above its surface is deflected. This occurs because as something moves freely above the Earth's surface, the Earth moves east under the object at a faster speed. And the Baltard put that up as proof.
Yeah, you're going to need an inertial reference frame with a non-inertial reference frame turning underneath it to have a Coriolis effect. And if that's the case, you're going to reduce flight times because Earth's rotating underneath planes.
There's no getting around that.
They say explain why.
Explain
I
why.
think you've done it a million times.
I don't mind explaining again and again and again. Earth's rotating underneath aeroplanes, helicopters, or anything else for that matter. Then you're going to have reduced flight times because Earth's rotating underneath aeroplanes. That's what gives you Coriolis effect. You watching things whilst you rotate underneath them. That's what gives you Coriolis effect. So if you've got Coriolis effect, you've got Earth rotating underneath planes. It's just that simple. If you haven't got Earth rotating under planes, as they argue and fight about here, whilst detailing things that happen in the inertial reference frame, completely in contrast to what Coriolis effect actually is and how it's described, then you're going to detail how you don't have anything occurring from the inertial reference frame, when you should have something absolutely observable and apparent deflection from the non-inertial reference frame, and we don't observe that. We don't observe planes seeming to curve as we watch them travel straight. And if we did, i.e. if there was a Coriolis effect, that flight that we see seeming to curve is only curving because Earth's rotating underneath it. Therefore, flight times would be reduced. Simple.
They spend their whole time fighting the deviation that should be there because they can't prove the Earth is spinning. And then they get lost in these stupid arguments about a fictitious force and apparent deflection. And they actually think they could make it reality just by talking about it. I mean, they come on the show, Nathan, and they argue against the deviation that they're supposed to have to even prove the Earth is spinning.
Right, well, they won't get away with that for much longer on account of the fact that they're no longer going to get to argue about what's happening in the inertial reference frame anymore, because that's not Coriolis effect. So that'll get stopped in their tracks.
Yeah, deception. Under this.
I have noticed since the Black Swan, they're going back to old arguments.
I think the hill that people are dying on is whether or not there is a deflection, whatever it is, Coriolis or not, due to something spinning. I think what the ballers are saying is this has to come from a spinning Earth.
Yeah.
When the alternative could be it's from spinning space over the unmoving Earth.
Yeah,
I think that's the main hang-up here.
No.
They're saying
no.
appears to be some sort of deflection
that stops
from
being
something.
Coriolis. No,
spinning.
I've just said this 3 times to you. That stops being Coriolis then. As soon as you say no, it could be something else that's nothing to do with a rotating platform underneath a non-rotating platform. Well, then it's not Coriolis then. So it's not like, well, that's the explanation for this occurrence we don't see. Maybe there's an alternative explanation for an apparent phenomena we don't actually observe. I don't see planes seeming to curve.
But
Yeah,
you still don't
because
get it.
if the air above the Earth was free enough to be inertial, non-inertial, or whatever, while the Earth is in a different reference frame, like you say, flight times would be different because the Earth would spin beneath it, and you'd spin faster, against, or you get to your destination faster going against the spin, waiting for the Earth to spin beneath you to spin your destination to you, than you'd go if you were going with the spin in the other direction.
Correct.
That would be, the case, yes.
Yeah. But detailing the flight times, as we do, is only as a result of the cause of Coriolis. So to have a Coriolis effect, the cause of that effect is you rotating underneath aeroplanes. Well, if you're rotating underneath aeroplanes, the cause of Coriolis effect, to have a Coriolis effect, you've got to be rotating underneath. Well, then flight times are reduced, because Earth's rotating underneath planes. As it's nearly the end of the show, just for anybody who wasn't aware, flight times are not reduced because Earth's turning underneath, which would be necessitated to have this Coriolis effect they claim. All you'll ever get from globeheads is the assertion that you have 15 degrees an hour proving Earth spins. What they don't add on to their statement is 15 degrees an hour of the Earth rotating underneath. They don't add that bit on, because then your follow-up, your rebuttal would be, if Earth's rotating underneath at 15 degrees an hour as claimed by Pendulum and Gyro, then it's rotating underneath planes at 15 degrees an hour and it would shorten flight times.
Pretty simple.
Yep, very simple. It's going to get a whole lot simpler now. We're not going to be arguing about what's happening to bullets and planes and drones in the inertial reference frame anymore, because that's not Coriolis. So we're no longer going to have to worry about arguing about whether or not we've got a retention of angular velocity. Who cares? That's not Coriolis. I can detail it with a lamppost that's not even moving, so I don't need to worry about what the projectile's doing.
Now they're saying in unison that the inertial reference frame, the atmosphere, is spinning with the Earth. Almost in unison now. I love it.
That's not Coriolis.
Great fun.
That's not Coriolis effect then. That's one reference frame and you need two to have a Coriolis effect. You need one rotating under the other. So if they're spinning in unison, you don't have two reference frames. Therefore, you won't ever achieve Coriolis. No proof of Earth spinning.
Yep, it's delusional on many levels. No Coriolis effect. And please explain how gas molecules who have no intermolecular bonds are spinning together and then attached to the Earth. And then explain east, north, and south surface winds. Bozos. Carnival tent bozos, man. That's what we got.
And with that, I think I'll say a huge, massive, enormous thank you to both Discord and G Plus panels for making today's live show possible. If you are watching this on the Nathan Oakley premiering stream, however, stay tuned, as there will be an after show to follow. A massive, huge, enormous thank you to all of you smashed the super chat, liked, commented, shared, subscribed, and all that good stuff. Be sure to check out nathanoakley.com and the Flat Earth Debate Forum to keep up to date with the community debate. Once again, stay tuned if you're watching on the premiering stream. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I'll see you all in the next video.
Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!